I am reviewing the Christianity Today podcast series, The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. According to my counting, this is episode number 11. The title of it is Red Sky at Morning. Hello everyone, Rick Thomas here. Thank you so much for watching the video. Please share any of our videos with anybody that you wish. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just hit the button there and also the bell, and that will alert you when there's a new video that drops. I'm doing these reviews because I want to make personal application to our lives. I'm not doing them to get into the play-by-play of the podcast series. You can listen to the series if you want. I'll give you a flyby of what Mike Hosper presents in the podcast, but I want to spend the bulk of the time talking about how we can apply these to our lives, how we can apply them to our local churches. The title of this episode, again, is Red Sky at Morning, which you're probably familiar with, that rhyme. It is a mariner's rhyme, and what it means is when you wake up in the morning and there's a red sky, there's probably a storm that's coming. And this is where Mike Hosper breaks into the Mars Hill timeline around 2008. They have been rising all along. Now they're cresting, and they're about ready to fall. Red sky at morning, there is a storm coming. Now what Mike does is he divides this Mars Hill experience into three stages. He calls them acts: Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and this is how he divided it up. Act 1 is plant and grow. They planted the church and they began to grow. That's 1996 to about 2000. And then Act 2, they are established now and they are maturing. And that would be 2001 to about 2007. And both of those acts are good for the most part. And then Act 3 is 2008 to 2014 when they eventually dissolved. That's when the storm really hit full force. Now, it's been brewing all along. It had been brewing several years before, even during Act 1 and Act 2, but it hit a climax in Act 3, 2008-2014, which led to its demise. Now, in Act 3, this is when they started the Resurgence blog. Many of you are familiar with it. It was a popular website where people wrote. Preachers from all over would write articles, people would read. It had a large audience. They were doing interviews and all sorts of things. But it was during this time also that they were having global expansion. Mark began to think about how we can spread, or how they could spread the message of Christ, not just to multiple campuses. And so they grew into 15, I think, campuses that even reached down into Albuquerque. I think they had some in Oregon as well as California. And so Mark had this expansion mindset. And then in 2007, Steve Jobs gave us the iPhone. And then it was at that point where all these social media platforms came into play. And so Mark saw that as an opportunity to be able to even have more expansion. Now, in a vacuum, these things are not bad. Having multiple services and multiple campuses don't have to be bad. Using technology redemptively in cyberspace through the internet, that does not have to be bad. In fact, when we started our ministry in 2008, that was the phrase that we used, the redemptive use of technology. How can we use technology redemptively to love God and love others very well? And so Driscoll wanted to build multiple campuses. He wanted to have a global ministry. I would encourage you, by the way, if you are a church and you don't have your services, for example, online, you're not taking advantage of the redemptive use of technology, I would appeal to you to do that. But this is where I want to get into the application phase of this review of episode number 11, Red Sky at Morning. That's pretty much what Mike Hosper covered in the entire episode, the things that I just shared with you. And so if you think about putting your ministry online, a church ministry, for example, again, I would encourage you to do so, but you also know the warning. With every means of grace, there's always inherent problems because of our fallenness. Therefore, understanding the pros and cons of putting your services online, it would be essential, because Mark Driscoll, he may have knew the pros, but they were not guarding as well as they should the cons. And so I want to share 5 positives 5 reasons you want to consider putting your ministry, specifically your church services, online. And then I want to give you 4 reasons why it could be a bad idea if you're not guarding that door of accountability for these 4 bad reasons. And so 5 reasons to put your services online. Number 1 is obvious. You can reach more people with the gospel. I mean, plain and simple. I mean, cyberspace is there, and I think we should use it redemptively. Number 2, those who can't attend a service, shut-ins, people who are having surgeries, they're just not able to get to the church meeting. This would be a fantastic means of grace for those people who are shut in. Number 3, those folks who are traveling. I inserted this one because we travel a lot, and we have benefited from watching our church services online. So that is a true pro, a positive, by being able to take part and maintain some kind of connectivity with your local church while you're traveling. So number 1, you can reach more people with the gospel. Number 2, you can reach those who absolutely can't get there, like shut-ins, the elderly, or people who are having other physical problems. Number 3, folks who are out of town can still maintain connectivity with the local church. Number 4, a church can connect with extra local missionaries or ministries that they support. And so missionaries and ministries that are outside the local area would be able to maintain a better connectivity with the local church. And then number 5, folks thinking about moving to the area. The tedious process of vetting a church, they can start 3 months early by jumping online and listening to the services. That would help so much. The moving process, many of you have done that. And if you could be proactive about finding a church before you ever leave your hometown and head to the next one, having services online would be a positive for these transient folks. And so there's 5 positive reasons. Now, again, you can add more. Just put them in the comment section, and that would be great. I would love to learn from you. But there's also some cons, and I want to share 4 of those. One of those, and I think it's the most important one, and probably the one that led to the demise of Mars Hill, and that is the character of the lead person or the character of the preacher. Character matters most. Character matters more than means or method. Now, in Driscoll's case, as we come to learn that he craved fame, power, and prestige among other sinful ambitions, and so there's no way that this could go well for long term. It just can't. Anytime that we take a prideful stance about anything, a fall is going to come at some point. And so a con about growing a global ministry, like in Driscoll's situation, is that if the character is not right, then you're building it on sand. Number 2, the preacher can lose focus on local responsibilities. You have a responsibility of people who come to you every week. They tithe, they give, they support the ministries, children's ministries, and so forth. They work for the church, they give themselves up. You have a responsibility to take care of those people. Another aspect of that, by the way, is that there are a lot of pastors who have parachurch organizations. I do not think that is wise. I pastored for a number of years, and it was more than full time. It was a small church, but it is a lot of responsibility to do soul care in an adequate way. And so whether the preacher is building a global ministry like what Mark Driscoll attempted to do, or these pastors that are participating in leading parachurch organizations, I trust that they have the accountability that they need. And I hope that they're doing adequate care to their sheep at their local facility. And then number 3, the sermon and maybe the worship set, that's all you get. And so you miss the coffee shop, you miss children's ministry, you miss the parking lot, you miss coming early and hanging out late, talking to people. You miss all the amenities of a church. The sermon is all you get. Number 4, the church member may be tempted to stop attending because they don't like all these other things that are tied to the local church. A lot of popular preachers can add to this temptation. Our celebrity preachers, again, I've made a case that it is a good thing to put your sermons online, but the backside liability of that is the celebrity preacher, for example. It can tempt people to want to get their sermon fix on through the internet because this church, even though they preach the gospel, lives are messy and there's 3 or 4 preferences that they don't meet meet my preferences, and so therefore I don't want to be a part. And so there's 4 cons that you really want to consider, and maybe you could add more to it. Now, the other aspect of this episode from Christianity Today, number 11, Red Sky at Morning, another aspect of that is this idea of change. This is what Mike Hosper was talking about with the 3 acts, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Change was happening in the church. Now, I want to say that change is not bad. In fact, change is absolutely necessary, whether it's your personal sanctification or an organization. In fact, what is implied in progressive sanctification is we have to be changing. In fact, if you're not changing, you're either not a Christian or there's something really wrong. You're dead. You're just dead. So God is active in us. And then if all of these Christians are part of an organization, then the organization is going to change too. And so change actually is necessary, and it speaks to being alive and being vibrant. Doing church differently has always changed from culture to culture, from generation to generation. Change is okay as long as we never leave Christ, our first love. We must be maturing, changing, and growing, whether personally or organizationally. Change is essential for everybody and every organization. And if you're not doing it, as I said, you might not be a Christian, or you might be dead. And if you don't adapt, if you're not growing and changing, then you may become like Blockbuster. And for those of you who say, well, what is Blockbuster? Well, that kind of proves the point. Blockbuster Video, you can Google it. They were wildly popular at one time, but they were not changing, and they don't exist anymore. And so here's the vital key about changing. Changing methods while never changing the message is wisdom. If any change untethers you from the gospel, you will have an adverse impact on people's lives. And so Mars Hill, Act 1 was changing. Act 2 was changing. And then Act 3 was changing, but they were getting it wrong. They were being untethered from the message of Christ. Now, perhaps Mark Driscoll's first love was Christ. I don't know. I never met him, don't know him. I would be ignorant, arrogant, and a fool to even speak into that, because I have no idea. I would be speaking out of my ignorance. And for charity's sake, I'm just going to say that once upon a time, Mark Driscoll's first love was Christ. And maybe it was the growth that stirred his selfish, ambitious cravings in his heart. But whether or not his love for Christ was genuine, again, I am not sure. But there is no question that Mark and Mars Hill drifted from the gospel. And so as I wrap up here, it does beg a few questions that I would love for you to consider. If you have not changed into a more mature person since coming to Christ, it is an indication that you might not know Jesus, and something definitely is wrong. If you have changed and your affection for Christ continues to deepen, then you are in a very good place. And so here's a few questions here. Number 1, what is your growth in Christ pattern? Is it moving along? I mean, maybe it's moving along like the stock market, as most of us, with ups and downs, but the trend line is going upward. Are you steadily accelerating upward, maturing in gratitude, maturing in appreciation, maturing in passion for Christ? This question is essential. Mark drifted from Christ. It became about growing his brand. The way to measure your growth in Christ is by assessing how you love God and how you love others practically. Do you build your life around what you want, or are you building your life around serving others mostly, and that is your primary desire? A few more questions. Do you carry people in your heart? That would be a good way to assess how you're doing in your maturity with Christ. When you spend appropriate time thinking about how to serve others, you're doing well. Do you carry people in your heart? Do you have a humble, gracious concern for other people that you want to serve them? Are you redemptively affecting folks for Christ with the gifts, skills, talents that you have? For those of you who build resources or craft sermons or start initiatives, I do a lot of building resources. Is it because your aim is to spread the fame of God and to impact lives with the gospel? And so I trust that you will think about these things, that putting services online, as Driscoll did, doesn't have to be a bad thing, but consider the parameters there. And then the second thing of this episode was changing. Mark Driscoll, Mars Hill was changing. Again, doesn't have to be a bad thing, but are we drifting from the message of Christ as they did, or are we growing in a deeper, maturing relationship with Christ that is measured objectively by how we are spreading the fame of God and impacting the lives of others? This is review of episode number 11. It is called Red Sky at Morning, the Christianity Today podcast series, The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. If you don't mind, you can share this video. I would appreciate it. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have any questions whatsoever, go to our ministry's website. We have free community forums where people globally can come and ask any question pertaining to life and godliness. And we would find no greater joy than to engage you about questions that are important to you. Thank you so much for watching.